It was a cold Monday morning. Outside the music school, the sky was cloudy and the wind blew softly through the trees. People walked in quickly, holding their coats tight, some carrying instruments, some with music sheets in their hands. Inside, the halls were full of energy. It was audition day for the town's annual music concert. Everyone wanted a chance to perform in front of a live audience. The school had placed a large white sign in the hallway. Auditions for Grand Winter Concert. Room 5A. Students of all ages were rushing around. Some were practicing with headphones on. Others were chatting nervously in groups. Teachers walked past, holding clipboards and looking busy. Everyone seemed to have a purpose. Everyone seemed to belong. Then quietly, a woman entered through the main door. She didn't look like the rest. Her clothes were very simple, an old gray coat, a plain black skirt, and shoes that looked well used. She carried no instrument, no music folder, not even a bag. Her brown hair was tied in a loose bun, and she wore no makeup. Her eyes were soft and tired, and she looked around as if she wasn't sure where to go. A few students stared for a moment, then continued talking. She looked like someone's mother, or maybe a visitor who had come to ask about a child. Her name was Nadia. She slowly walked up to the receptionist and asked politely, "Excuse me, I heard there are auditions today. May I join?" The receptionist looked surprised. She looked Nadia up and down, then nodded carefully. "Yes, room 5A, down the hall. But do you have an instrument?" "No," Nadia said gently. "Just the piano." The receptionist raised an eyebrow. "Do you have an appointment? A teacher's recommendation?" Nadia shook her head. "No, I just wanted to try. If it's allowed." The receptionist hesitated. Nadia's voice was calm and respectful, and there was something polite about her. Not demanding, just quietly asking. The receptionist finally said, "Okay, go ahead, you can try." Nadia thanked her softly and walked down the hallway. In room 5A, 3 music teachers were sitting at a long table. They were the judges for today's auditions. Each of them had a clipboard and a list of names. One was Mr. Keller, a tall man with silver hair and glasses. He had been teaching classical piano for over 30 years and was known for being very strict. The second judge was Miss Lena, a younger teacher who taught voice and performance. She was kind but usually focused on students who had potential for the stage. The third was Mr. Imran, who handled scheduling and instruments. They were going through the list when Nadia quietly walked in. She stood near the door and waited. The judges looked up. "Yes," said Mr. Keller. "I'm here to audition," Nadia replied. The 3 teachers looked confused. Mr. Keller checked his list. "Name?" "Nadia." "I'm not on the list," she said. "I just came to try." Lena gave a small, polite smile. "Do you have a piece prepared?" Nadia nodded. "Yes, Rachmaninoff's Piano Concerto No. 2. The room went silent for a second. Mr. Imran stopped writing. Mr. Keller leaned forward. "You want to play that?" "Yes," Nadia said softly. Mr. Keller looked annoyed. "That's one of the most difficult piano pieces in the world. Are you sure you don't want to try something easier? We have simple selections from Chopin or Debussy." "No, thank you," Nadia said with quiet confidence. "I'd like to try this one." Lena tried to be polite, though her voice had a trace of disbelief. "Have you performed before? Do you play professionally?" Nadia only smiled gently. "Not in a long time. But I can play." The teachers looked at each other. Mr. Imran whispered, "Let her try. We're ahead of schedule anyway." Mr. Keller sighed and motioned to the piano. "All right, go ahead." Nadia walked slowly toward the grand piano in the room. It was a beautiful black Steinway, polished and shining under the lights. She ran her fingers lightly over the keys as she sat down. The bench was a bit low. She adjusted it quietly without asking for help. The teachers leaned back in their chairs. Mr. Keller folded his arms. Lena picked up her pen. Mr. Imran stared at the clock on the wall. In the corner of the room, two students waiting for their turns whispered to each other. One of them smiled mockingly. "This is going to be painful." Nadia closed her eyes for a moment. She wasn't nervous. She wasn't trying to impress anyone. She simply sat there, calm and still, like she was having a quiet conversation with herself. Her fingers rested on the keys, but didn't move yet. She could feel the years behind her. The last time she played in public, she was just 23. Back then, she had been on stages in Europe, Prague, Vienna, Moscow. She had been called a prodigy. But then something happened, something that broke her world in two. Her father passed away suddenly, her mother fell ill, and she had to leave everything behind to take care of her family. Music stayed inside her, but she locked it away. Now, after so many years, something in her heart had told her to try again. Not for fame, not for applause, just to remember who she was. The room waited. A long, awkward silence filled the air. And then Nadia began to play. Just a few notes at first. Soft, deep, emotional. The air in the room changed. No one expected what came next. Her fingers moved over the keys like they had a life of their own. She wasn't reading any sheet music. She didn't need to. Every note was already inside her. But this was still just the beginning. Back at the judges' table, Mr. Keller's eyes narrowed. He had heard hundreds of students attempt Rachmaninoff. Most failed. But this was something different. He leaned slightly forward, trying not to show too much interest too soon. Lena stopped writing. She lowered her pen and stared at Nadia's hands. The students who had been giggling in the corner slowly sat up straight. The room was no longer a classroom. It felt like a concert hall. Nadia's body swayed slightly with the rhythm. Her face was peaceful, but full of expression. The music flowed from her like water from a deep, silent well. Powerful, emotional, unstoppable. Mr. Imran whispered under his breath, "Who is she?" The performance was not perfect in the technical sense. A few notes may have slipped, but it didn't matter. There was something in the way she played that made the room feel alive, like she was telling a story from a place no one could see. Her pain, her love, her past, it all came through in the music. And still, no one in the room knew who she truly was. To them, she had entered the room as a plain woman, someone who looked like she didn't belong in a place full of rising stars and ambitious performers. But as she played, that idea began to break. Every second proved them more and more wrong. After just 2 minutes of playing, everyone knew. Nadia was not just good. She was extraordinary. But the most interesting thing, she didn't seem to want recognition. She didn't look up to see if anyone was impressed. She wasn't trying to show off. She was simply playing because she loved it, because it was a part of her. The performance was only halfway done, but already the judges looked at each other in disbelief. Mr. Keller, the strictest of them all, had lowered his clipboard. Lena's eyes had softened, and Mr. Imran smiled, shaking his head slightly as if he couldn't believe what he was seeing. Meanwhile, Nadia continued. She was deep in the heart of the piece now, the part where emotion builds and tension rises. Her fingers flew over the keys with perfect memory. Every note had feeling. Her body moved with the music, her head bowed slightly, her breath in, rhythm with the flow. And still, no sheet music, no hesitation. It was clear now. She was a virtuoso, a master of her art, but no one had seen it coming. Why? Because of her clothes, her age, her silence, her simple appearance? They had judged her before she had even played a single note. Now, the entire room sat quietly, caught in the power of her music. She finished the final part softly, like a whisper. Her hands rested on the last chord for just a second longer, and then Silence. Nadia opened her eyes slowly. She looked up, not expecting applause, not expecting praise. But what she saw were eyes wide with respect, mouths slightly open, hands still. She had surprised everyone, and this was just the beginning. Nadia sat quietly at the grand piano. Her hands rested gently on the keys, but she had not started playing yet. The room was quiet, but not because people were waiting in excitement. It was the kind of silence that happens when everyone is unsure. A few students near the back of the room whispered softly to each other. One said, "She looks nervous." Another replied, "She'll probably stop after a few notes." Mr. Keller, the oldest and strictest of the teachers, looked at Nadia with tired eyes. He had seen many students try this difficult piece and fail. He was ready to stop her if she made even one big mistake. He didn't want to waste time. He had no idea what Nadia had inside her. To him, she was just another person trying to show off with a piece they couldn't really play. Miss Lena, the younger teacher, sat with a half-smile on her face. She believed in encouraging people, but even she thought Nadia was making a mistake. In her mind, only serious performers with years of training could even attempt this concerto. Nadia looked like she hadn't touched a piano in ages. Her skirt was too long, her shoes looked worn out, and her hair was not styled. She didn't fit the picture of a confident performer. Nadia, on the other hand, was not thinking about the teachers. She wasn't thinking about how people were judging her. She had lived many years being judged. She was used to it. She had come here with a quiet reason. It was not for fame or attention. It was not even to prove anything. She had come here because, deep in her heart, she had missed the piano. Missed it like a lost friend. She had spent so many years hiding her music, putting it away so she could care for others, so she could survive life's hardships. But the music had never really left her. There was a story in her hands, a story of her life, her sorrow, her strength, and she had chosen this very piece, Rachmaninoff's Piano Concerto No. 2, because it matched her journey. That piece was not just hard to play because of the notes. It was hard to play because it was full of deep feeling. It demanded soul, not just skill. And Nadia had both. She adjusted the piano bench slowly. It squeaked a little. A few students chuckled quietly. Mr. Keller looked up from his clipboard, already preparing to give a low score. But he said nothing. Lena wrote something on her paper, not a score, just a note. Looks unsure. Nadia placed her fingers lightly on the keys. Her posture was relaxed, not stiff like some students who tried to impress. She breathed in slowly, then closed her eyes for a few seconds. In her mind, the music had already started. Then she pressed the first note. It was soft. So soft, it seemed like a whisper. But it was also strong. Not loud, but full of something, powerful. Her left hand followed, and the notes began to move gently like the start of a quiet story. Everyone in the room stopped whispering. Even the students who had been giggling earlier became still. Something was different about this sound. Mr. Keller looked up quickly. His eyes narrowed slightly. He didn't write anything down. Lena sat straighter. She didn't expect this. Nadia continued to play. The notes rose like waves, soft, then strong, then soft again. Her fingers moved with grace, like they had been waiting for this moment for years. She didn't look at the keys. She didn't need to. Every part of the piano was familiar to her. Her hands knew where to go. She didn't make a single mistake, but that wasn't the surprising part. What surprised the room was the feeling in the music. There was something inside the notes. Sadness, yes, but also peace. Something gentle and deep. Something that made people feel things they couldn't explain. Mr. Imran, the third judge, leaned forward slightly. He whispered to Lena, "Did she say where she studied?" Lena shook her head. "No, she just walked in." The piece grew more complex. The notes became faster, the emotion heavier. But Nadia's hands never rushed. She stayed in control, guiding every sound with care. Her face didn't show effort. Instead, her eyes were half closed, and her expression looked peaceful, like she was remembering something far away. In her mind, she was not in that room. She was not sitting in front of teachers or students. She was back in a small room in Eastern Europe, where her first teacher, an old woman named Madame Paulina, used to tell her, "Music is not played by fingers. It is played by heart." Nadia had been a child then, full of passion. She had played for royal guests on stage in cold grand halls, always shining, always perfect. Then, it had all disappeared. Her father had died of a heart attack one winter morning. Her mother became sick soon after. Nadia had to leave music school and go home. For years, she worked small jobs, cared for her family, and forgot what it felt like to be a performer. She never complained. Life was hard, but she had always found small ways to survive. The piano stayed silent. She didn't touch one for over a decade. Then, last month, she had passed this very school. She saw a small boy through the window struggling to play a simple piece. The sound wasn't right, but it made her stop. It brought back something in her heart, a small fire that had been sleeping for years. She had asked inside if they allowed adults to play. They said anyone could audition, so she came back, quietly, wearing her old clothes, her old shoes, nothing fancy, just herself. Back in the room, she reached the most difficult part of the piece, the part where the music rises with power, almost like a storm. Students held their breath. Some leaned forward. They didn't know what to expect, but Nadia played it with grace. Her fingers danced over the keys, fast, precise, full of fire. Her whole body moved with the music, not in a showy way, but naturally, as if she was made for this. Mr. Keller was now fully focused. He couldn't hide it. He had seen many performances, but this one was different. It was not polished in the way students tried to polish their pieces. It was alive, raw, real. He thought to himself, "She's not just playing this, she's living it." Lena watched silently. She didn't write a word. She couldn't look away. Something in Nadia's music touched her deeply. Maybe something she had forgotten in her own career. That feeling of playing not for applause, but for the love of sound. The other students, many of whom had come to show their talents, now watched with respect. They didn't know who this woman was, but they knew one thing for sure. She was not ordinary. She had something none of them had seen before. Nadia came to the final part of the piece. The music slowed down again. The fast waves became soft, rivers. She held each note just long enough to make it beautiful. Then came the last few chords, gentle, emotional, like the end of a story. Her fingers pressed the final note. Silence. She didn't move right away. She kept her hands on the keys, letting the sound fade naturally. Then she opened her eyes. The room was frozen. No one clapped, not yet. They were too surprised, too moved. Finally, Lena whispered, "Wow." Mr. Keller put down his pen. "That was, unexpected." Mr. Imran leaned back in his chair. "She's better than most of our advanced students." Nadia stood slowly. She didn't smile, didn't wait for praise. She just said softly, "Thank you," and walked back to the center of the room. Mr. Keller spoke first. "Where did you learn to play like that?" Nadia paused. Then she replied, "A long time ago. In another life, you could say." Lena asked, "Have you performed before?" "Yes, but it's been many years." The teachers exchanged glances. There was something they hadn't seen, something they didn't expect. Nadia had walked into the room like a quiet stranger. No fancy clothes, no introduction, no demand for attention. Just a simple woman with a deep love for music. But now, They were looking at her differently. This was not just someone trying. This was someone who had lived music, someone who had been away for too long and returned not with ego, but with soul. The students in the room clapped now, not because they were told to, but because they felt something real. Nadia smiled softly, nodded, and sat down on a nearby bench. She didn't need to say anything more. The music had already said everything, and none of the teachers, not Mr. Keller, not Lena, not Imran, could forget what they had just witnessed. Because for the first time in a long time, they remembered why they had chosen music in the first place, because of people like Nadia. People who didn't need to prove anything, but still proved everything. After Nadia's performance, the room felt different. It was like a spell had been cast, and nobody wanted to break it. The sound of her music still echoed in their minds. Students who had never noticed her before now looked at her with admiration and curiosity. The teachers who had been ready to dismiss her were silent, thinking deeply about what they had just heard. Nadia quietly returned to her seat in the back corner. She didn't try to talk to anyone or explain herself. She didn't brag or smile proudly. She just sat with calm eyes, hands folded in her lap, as if nothing special had happened. But everyone knew something extraordinary had taken place. After a long pause, Mr. Keller stood and cleared his throat. His voice sounded different, less strict, more thoughtful. He looked at Nadia and said, "That was one of the finest performances we've heard in this school in a very long time." Then he added, almost like a question, "You said you haven't played in years?" Nadia nodded. "That's right." "Why?" he asked softly, truly curious this time. She looked down at her hands. They were still shaking slightly, not from fear, but from emotion. Then she said, "Life didn't leave much space for music. My father passed away. My mother was very ill. I had to leave everything and take care of my family. I worked wherever I could. Years passed. I didn't touch a piano." There was a quiet sadness in her voice, but no bitterness. She was not blaming anyone, just telling the truth. Miss Lena leaned forward, her eyes gentle. "But how did you keep that talent alive for so long without practice?" Nadia gave a small smile. "Music never left me. I couldn't play, but I heard it in everything. In the sound of the rain, in the wind through trees, in the voices of people on the street. Music was with me even when I had no piano." The students were silent. They had never heard anyone speak about music that way. For many of them, music was just something to study, to compete with, to perform for grades or applause. But for Nadia, it was something much deeper. Mr. Imran spoke next. "Would you be willing to help some of our students? Maybe guide them? Your understanding of the music? It's rare." Nadia looked surprised. "You want me to teach?" "Yes," Mr. Imran said. "If you're willing." She thought for a moment. Teaching had never been her plan. She had only come to play once, to feel the keys again, to let out the music inside her. But now, seeing the young faces around her, something warmed inside her heart. "I can try," she said, "if the students want to learn from me." A few of them immediately nodded. One of the girls said, "Please, miss, I'd love to learn from you." And just like that, Nadia's quiet return to the piano became something bigger. She was not just a surprise performer anymore. She had become someone people looked up to. In the days that followed, Nadia started coming to the music room more often. At first, she stayed in the corner, helping only a few students who asked. She was gentle in her teaching, never harsh. She didn't scold or criticize. Instead, she told stories. Stories about how music could express feelings, how it could heal pain, how it could speak when words failed. She helped a shy boy who always played too softly. She told him, "You must believe your sound matters. Don't be afraid of being heard." Slowly, his playing grew stronger. She helped a proud girl who rushed through her pieces. Music needs patience, Nadia said kindly. Let the notes breathe. The girl learned to slow down, to listen, to feel. The students began to change, not just in how they played, but in how they saw music. They stopped treating it like a competition and started to love it for what it truly was. The teachers, too, began to notice. Mr. Keller, who had always believed in discipline and hard work, started to understand that emotion was just as important. He listened more carefully now. He watched Nadia with respect. Miss Lena often joined Nadia during her lessons. She would sit beside her and learn quietly, asking questions, sometimes even playing duets together. Lena realized she had been teaching music from the mind, but Nadia was teaching it from the heart. One afternoon, Lena asked Nadia, "Why didn't you become a famous pianist? You had the talent." Nadia looked out the window, watching the autumn leaves fall. "I was on that path once. I had offers, concerts, dreams. But then my father died suddenly. He was my biggest supporter. My mother fell sick a month later. There was no one else to care for her. I had no choice. And after that? After that, it became about survival. I worked as a cleaner, a waitress, sometimes even a seamstress. Anything to pay for medicine and food. The piano, it became a memory. But you didn't forget how to play? I forgot how to perform for people, but I never forgot how to play for myself." That sentence stayed with Lena for a long time. The other teachers held a meeting and agreed to offer Nadia an official position at the music academy. They didn't care that she didn't have recent certificates or modern teaching methods. Her talent, her understanding, and the way she touched lives were more important than any paper. Nadia accepted the job with quiet grace. She didn't ask about salary or title. She just said, "I'll do my best." Soon, students from outside the school began to hear about her. Some came just to listen to her play in the mornings, when she thought no one was around. Others asked for private lessons. She didn't turn anyone away, rich or poor, beginner or advanced. To her, music belonged to everyone. One evening during a school concert, the headmaster asked Nadia to perform again. She hesitated. "Let the students have the stage," she said. But they all wanted to hear her. They clapped and begged, so she agreed. She chose a different piece this time. A soft, simple one. Not difficult, not flashy. Just a melody full of feeling. As she played, the whole hall fell silent, just like before. But this time, people listened with even more respect. They knew who she was now. Not just a mystery woman, but someone who had walked through fire and still kept music in her soul. After the performance, the students gave her a standing ovation. She smiled, stood up, and bowed, her eyes shining. Not with pride, but with quiet joy. That night, Lena sat with her after the concert. "You've changed the whole atmosphere of this school," she said. Nadia shook her head. "I didn't change anything. I just reminded everyone of something they already had." "What's that?" Lena asked. "The reason they fell in love with music in the first place." Word about Nadia spread slowly but steadily. Other schools invited her to speak. Small music halls invited her to perform. But she never let it get to her head. She stayed, humble, always reminding her students, music is not about being the best. It's about being honest. One day, a man arrived at the academy. He was older, with kind eyes and a familiar accent. He introduced himself as a former student of Madame Paulina, Nadia's old teacher. "She used to speak of you," he said. "She thought you had disappeared forever." Nadia was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "I almost did." He smiled. "But you're back now, and stronger than ever." He invited her to visit her old music school, which still stood in a quiet part of the city. At first she didn't want to go. Too many memories. But finally she agreed. When she arrived, she saw that the school was smaller than she remembered, a little worn down. But when she stepped inside, The same feeling returned. The smell of wood, the echo of music in the halls, the old photos on the walls. She found a picture of herself from long ago. A young girl in a white dress, standing proudly beside a piano. She touched the photo gently. A student nearby asked, "Is that you?" "Yes," she whispered. The teachers there invited her to perform. This time she didn't hesitate. She played one of Madame Paulina's favorite pieces, filling the room with sound that seemed to bring the old walls to life. People cried, people smiled. Some closed their eyes and let the music carry them back. In time. Afterward, a young girl came up to Nadia and said, "I want to play like you one day." Nadia knelt down and replied, "Then never stop listening to your heart. Let music be your friend, your truth, and your home." She returned to her academy with a peaceful heart. The visit had reminded her of her roots, of the journey she had taken. But more than anything, it showed her that her story was not over. She was no longer a hidden talent. She was now a light for others, showing them that no matter how far life takes you away from your dreams, it's never too late to return. And in every note she played, every lesson she gave, every smile she shared, there was one message that shone the brightest. You don't need to look special to be special. You just need to stay true to your gift. Mr. Keller rose from his chair, but the applause that filled the room almost pushed him back down again. It started as a few hesitant claps from the students in the corner, then spread, gathering strength like a wave rolling across the shore, until every pair of hands was joining in. The noise echoed off the studio's wooden panels, turning a small classroom into something that felt as grand as a concert hall. Nadia stood beside the piano, eyes lowered, cheeks warming with surprise. She had prepared herself for polite nods, or at best, a restrained, "Thank you," but this was different. She felt the sound of that applause enter her chest and crack open a hidden door she had kept bolted for years. It was joy, yes, but it was also disbelief, as though part of her could not accept that such a moment belonged to her anymore. When the clapping finally softened, Mr. Keller cleared his throat. His voice, usually brisk and sharp like the snap of a metronome, was suddenly unsure. He stepped forward, clipboard forgotten on the chair behind him, and said, "I owe you an apology for doubting you." The students grew silent, almost holding their breath. They had never heard the stern master admit doubt. Nadia lifted her eyes and met his. There was no anger in her, only a calm acceptance. She knew people judged quickly. It was something she had lived through many times, but she also knew that music could change hearts faster than words ever could. Before Mr. Keller could speak again, Miss Lena hurried to Nadia's side. The young teacher's eyes were wet, but her voice was clear. "You played with more feeling than I've heard in years," she said. Please tell us where you learned to play like that." She said it softly, as though afraid that pressing for details might break the fragile magic still hanging in the air. Nadia hesitated. Stories of her past were knots of memory she had not untangled in a long time. Yet something in Miss Lena's tone felt safe, and for the first time in many years, Nadia let herself share fragments of the life she had locked away. She spoke quietly, in a gentle rhythm, as if she were reading notes off an invisible score. She told them about her childhood in a small riverside town, where the sound of water against stone set the beat of her earliest lullabies. She spoke of her mother humming folk songs while cooking stew, of her father saving coins for a month to buy her first sheet of Chopin, of the day an old upright piano arrived on a neighbor's cart because there was no money for delivery. She described the smell of the piano's wood, the chipped ivory keys, and the way her fingers, still small, still unsure, had trembled on middle C. She told of Madame Paulina, the traveling teacher who heard her practicing through an open window and marched straight in to speak with her parents. Madame Paulina had declared that the girl had music stitched into her bones and must train properly. For 3 years, Nadia said, she had studied under that strict yet affectionate guide. until her talent won her a scholarship to a conservatory in Moscow. At this, a gasp swept through the students. The Moscow Conservatory was a name whispered, with awe even by seasoned performers. Mr. Imran's eyebrows shot upward, and Mr. Keller placed a hand on the edge of the grand piano, as if steadying himself. Nadia, however, did not pause to enjoy the effect of her words. She continued, voice steady, telling how she spent winters practicing until her fingers cracked and bled, how she learned to feel notes not as separate points, but as a single line, of living color. She recalled the thrill of her first competition, the applause, the flowers, the review in a cultural magazine that called her the rising star of the Volga. Her story sounded like a fairy tale coming true. But fairy tales, she reminded them, often hold a twist. That twist arrived one December evening, she said, when a telegram reached her dormitory. Her father had collapsed at his factory job and died before reaching the hospital. She had ridden the night train home, the wheels clattering beneath her like an endless funeral drum. At the funeral, she learned her mother had been coughing blood for weeks, but had hidden it to spare worry. Nadia left school days later, promising to return in spring. Spring, however, came and went while she nursed her mother, sold sheet music to pay for medicine, and took shifts cleaning offices after midnight. Eventually, her mother recovered enough to walk without help, but by then tuition was impossible, and Nadia's place at the conservatory had been filled. Music, once a daily fire, was now a small ember she kept alive only by humming to herself while scrubbing floors. Her words painted pictures in the listeners' minds. Some students looked down, ashamed of how they had stifled laughter at her. Worn shoes. Others wiped their eyes. Nadia spoke of the following years without bitterness. She described ordinary jobs, waiting tables, stitching hems, tutoring neighborhood children, and how each job taught her to listen to the hidden rhythms in everyday life. The clink of cafe cups, the swish of scissors through cloth, the rising lilts of children reciting lessons. I practiced without a piano, she said, because the world itself was my instrument. Miss Lena whispered, but you still play like a master. Nadia nodded softly. She explained how every few months she found a church or community hall that allowed her to sit at their old pianos after hours. I played in the dark, she said, so no one would see a stranger and ask me to leave. In darkness, I could be the girl in Moscow again, just for a few stolen moments. Mr. Imran, who had kept silent, finally spoke. You turned hardship into music. That is uncommon. He looked at Mr. Keller and Miss Lena. We judged her by her coat and forgot how coats can hide treasure. Mr. Keller straightened, as though a decision had crystallized. Nadia, he said, your story humbles me. I wish to offer you more than an apology. This school needs musicians who understand struggle and beauty intertwined. Will you accept a position here? Your title and salary can be arranged, but your true value is beyond titles. He gestured to the students. You've already begun, teaching them without knowing it. Imagine what you could do with an official class. A murmur rippled among the students, one of hopeful excitement. Nadia inhaled deeply. She felt her past and present folding together like pages of a book, finally closing on the right chapter. Yet she also felt fear of responsibility, of stepping back into a world she had left under sorrowful clouds. She chose honesty. I will accept, she said, if I can teach not just technique, but also patience and feeling. I don't want trophies or rankings. I want music to heal, the way it healed me. Mr. Keller's usually stern face softened. Then we are agreed, he said. He extended his hand. Nadia shook it, her grip gentle but firm. The room erupted into spontaneous applause again, lighter this time, but filled with household warmth instead of thunderous awe. Students crowded around, asking questions, showing her lines they struggled with, pleading for advice. She answered each with attentive kindness. She showed a timid boy how to place his thumb just so. She reminded a boasting teen that silence between notes mattered as much as speed. She encouraged a girl with shaking hands to breathe with the measure, as though inhaling courage itself. Over the next weeks, Nadia's life changed in quiet but powerful ways. She received a small office with a dusty, upright piano, which she scrubbed until its wood shone like mellow wine. She covered the walls with blank sheets, where students could write what music meant to them. No grades, only feelings. She arrived early, staying late, practicing scales not for perfection's sake, but to strengthen the muscles that had forgotten long passages. Word of her spread beyond the campus. A local journalist wrote a column titled "Virtuoso in Disguise," recounting her audition and the hush that followed her final chord. Letters arrived. An elderly retired composer invited her for tea. A mother asked if Nadia would teach her child discounted lessons. A regional orchestra's conductor inquired whether Nadia would consider appearing as a guest soloist for their spring concert. These invitations filled Nadia with alternating waves of joy and uncertainty. One evening, she sat alone at the practice room, piano long after everyone had gone. The campus lights flickered through the window, casting patterns across the keys. She tried to imagine herself on a grand stage again, lights in her eyes, an orchestra waiting for her cue. Part of her heart leapt, another part shivered. She remembered the pain of losing that dream once, and wondered whether chasing it now would open old wounds. She pressed a single note and let it ring. The sound reminded her that every choice she had made, leaving school, caring for family, working odd jobs, had shaped her music into what it was now. Deeper, honest, resilient. Maybe audiences needed that kind of music as much as students did. Weeks later, she accepted the conductor's offer, but on one condition: half the concert proceeds would fund scholarships for students who couldn't afford lessons. When the conductor agreed, she felt a fresh purpose blossom inside her. Preparing for the concert became a nightly ritual. She chose Rachmaninoff again, not out of stubbornness, but because the concerto mirrored her life's valleys and peaks, better than any other piece. She practiced until notes grew warm under her fingers, until the music no longer belonged to a past prodigy, but to the woman she had become. The night of the performance arrived in early spring. A full moon hung over the city's aged opera house, silvering its stone columns. Nadia stood backstage, hands clasped, listening to the tuning orchestra. She wore a simple dark blue dress, borrowed from the school's costume closet. No sequins, no elaborate hairstyle. Still the plain woman, but now every inch radiating calm confidence. Miss Lena stood beside her, acting as page-turner and moral support. Mr. Keller peeked from the wings, more nervous than he had been in decades, as though a father watching a child's first recital. The conductor gave Nadia a gentle nod. She stepped under the bright lights, and applause rolled toward her like warm wind. She bowed once, seated herself, and rested her fingers on the keys. She remembered her father's encouraging nod, her mother folding blankets in the next room, Madame Paulina's stern praise, the students chattering in the academy hallways. She carried them all into that first sweeping phrase. The orchestra joined, and the concerto unfolded like a vast landscape. Valleys of sorrow, cliffs of doubt, sunlit meadows of hope. Nadia played neither cautiously nor flamboyantly. She played as if guiding friends through her memories, showing them hurt, recovery, humility, and triumph. In the audience sat caretakers who worked night shifts, students clutching second-hand programs, seasoned critics, and families new to classical music. Each person felt something personal in her performance, as though she had written the score for them alone. When the final chord thundered, then faded into shimmering silence, there was a heartbeat of stillness so pure it seemed the world had ceased spinning. Then came applause so fierce it rattled balcony railings. Some stood, others shouted bravo with tears streaking faces. Nadia rose, bowed deeply, and saw joy spark in corner-of-the-eye glimpses. two students high-fiving, a dignified older critic wiping away astonished tears, Miss Lena's face glowing with pride. Backstage, after the fifth curtain call, Nadia found a small envelope on the piano bench. Inside was a note in familiar, elegant handwriting. "Your music never left you. Welcome home. MP. Her." Breath caught. Madame Paulina must have heard, perhaps through the journalist's article, perhaps through the musical grapevine that spread miracles faster than gossip. Nadia pressed the note to her chest, overwhelmed by gratitude. She whispered into the empty dressing room, "Thank you for waiting for me, old friend." In the months that followed, scholarship funds opened doors for talented children whose parents once believed classical lessons unreachable. Nadia divided her days between teaching, performing occasional concerts, and visiting community centers where she let kids bang out curious clusters of notes, guiding them to discover beauty in sound. She spoke at a conference about the power of second chances, sharing that talent may sleep, but never truly dies if fed with quiet love. She emphasized that appearances mislead, that humility protects genius better than pride. Her words reached listeners far beyond the hall, spreading across social media posts and small-town newspapers, inspiring older adults to dust off violins, encouraging teenagers not to quit when competitions bruised their egos. But what mattered most to Nadia were the simple moments. Hearing a once bashful student play boldly at a recital, seeing Mr. Keller smile during lessons rather than scowl, watching Miss Lena experiment with emotional phrasing instead of technical perfection. The academy itself changed. Posters that once advertised only rankings and trophies now celebrated open mic story nights, where students shared how music helped them through hardships. Practice rooms stayed lit late, not from stress, but from groups jamming together, laughter and melodies spilling into corridors. One rainy afternoon, Nadia found herself alone in the classroom where her journey at the school had begun. She ran a finger along the polished edge of the grand piano and remembered that first day. The whispers, the doubt, the quiet room waiting for a surprise. She realized with a tender smile that this instrument had been the door back into her future. Her reflection shimmered in the glossy lid. Still the same plain face, but eyes now filled with ember-bright certainty. She played a single arpeggio, soft as mist, and let it fade. The door opened softly behind her. It was Mr. Imran, holding a bouquet of simple white lilies. "From the staff," he said. "We wanted to thank you for everything." Nadia accepted. The flowers inhaled their crisp scent and felt tears prick her eyes. It wasn't the bouquets from famous halls or reviews in highbrow journals that mattered now. It was these small symbols of shared respect and human connection. As dusk settled, she walked out of the academy toward the bus stop, lilies cradled in her arms. Students hurried past, some calling out good night, others waving sheet music triumphantly. The streetlights blinked on, dotting the evening with halos of gold. Nadia paused, looking up at their gentle glow. She realized that, like those lamps, her music now served a simple role: to light paths, to chase back a little darkness, to remind wanderers of home. And after everything, the early promise, the silence, the remarkable return, she understood something profound. True virtuosity was not the roar of applause or the glare of fame. It was a quiet, steady flame that warmed other souls enough to ignite their own small fires. So she stepped onto the bus, clutching lilies, listening to the hum of the engine, the patter of rain on windows, and the faint melody of life around her. Every sound in its ordinary beauty became part of an unending concerto that she would keep playing, not always on ivory keys, but in every act of kindness, every lesson taught, every heart she helped find its song. The moment Nadia accepted the invitation to perform as a guest soloist with the regional orchestra, her life took on a new and exciting direction. Though she had lived quietly for many years, playing in secret and working odd jobs, this opportunity, felt like a fresh start, a chance to reconnect with the music she had once dreamed about without the weight of fear or loss holding her back. But this new chapter did not come easily or quickly. It was filled with long hours of practice, moments of doubt, and unexpected challenges that tested her in ways she had never imagined. In the beginning, Nadia's days became a busy blend of teaching, rehearsing, and preparing for the concert. Her mornings often started early with lessons for her students, many of whom came from families that could barely afford to feed them, let alone pay for music classes. Nadia was patient and kind with each one, encouraging them to believe in themselves and their abilities. She knew the power music had not only to entertain, but to heal and inspire. She shared stories from her own life, the struggles and small victories, to help her students understand that talent alone was never enough. It was determination and love for the craft that made a difference. Between lessons, Nadia retreated to the practice room to work on the concerto she had chosen, Rachmaninoff's Piano Concerto No. 2. It was a piece she knew well from her early years of study. But playing it again after so many years was like trying to catch a fleeting dream. The fingers that once flew over the keys effortlessly now trembled at times, unsure and weak. She spent hours rebuilding strength and precision, relearning every note and phrase until they became second nature once more. Sometimes, when the music flowed easily, tears came to her eyes, because she realized how much she had missed this connection to sound and rhythm. Yet alongside the excitement, there was fear. The fear of failing, of disappointing the orchestra, the audience, and herself. She worried that the years away from professional performance had dulled her skill too much. She feared that the audience would not accept her humble presence on stage, the plain woman without flashy dresses or loud fanfare. At night, she would sit alone in her small apartment, staring at the blank walls, wondering if she was making a mistake. But each time, the memory of the students she taught, the faces of those who believed in her, and the note Madame Paulina had left backstage during her first big concert gave her courage. As the concert day approached, Nadia's nerves grew stronger. The day before, she visited the concert hall to rehearse with the orchestra. The grand space, with its high ceilings and velvet seats, made her heart race. The conductor, a kindly man who had seen many great musicians, greeted her warmly and reminded her that the music was a conversation, not a performance of perfection. With his encouragement, Nadia felt a small flame of confidence flicker inside her chest. On the night of the concert, Nadia prepared carefully. She wore a simple, elegant dress that made her feel comfortable, yet special. She arrived early, greeting the orchestra members and feeling the buzz of excitement in the air. Backstage, the hum of instruments tuning and whispered conversations surrounded her. Miss Lena was there too, smiling and offering quiet support. Mr. Keller watched from the wings, pride shining in his eyes despite his usual stern demeanor. When it was time, Nadia walked onto the stage to the sound of applause. The bright lights felt warm against her skin, but she focused on the music waiting in her hands. Sitting at the grand piano, she took a deep breath and placed her fingers on the keys. The opening chords spilled into the hall like a soft wave, and then she was lost in the music. The highs and lows, the gentle melodies, the stormy passages, all coming alive through her touch. The orchestra followed her lead perfectly, their instruments weaving a rich tapestry of sound around her piano. Nadia played not just with skill but with emotion, pouring every ounce of her experience into the notes. She thought of her parents, of the sacrifices they made, of the hardships she endured and overcame. She felt the presence of Madame Paulina, who had first believed in her, and of her students, who now cheered her on from far away. The audience listened in rapt silence, caught in the spell of the concerto's beauty and the story behind it. When the final note lingered and faded into quiet, the hall erupted with applause that felt like thunder. People stood, clapped, and shouted, "Bravo!" Nadia stood and bowed deeply, her heart full. Tears of joy and relief blurred her vision, but she smiled because she had reclaimed a part of herself she thought was lost forever. After the concert, Nadia was invited to meet the orchestra members and several audience members who praised her performance. Letters and calls followed from other concert halls inviting her to play again. However, Nadia remained humble. She insisted that a portion of the proceeds from her concerts go toward scholarships for young musicians who lacked resources, just as she once did. She wanted to open the door for others, to make sure no child's talent was lost due to hardship. Back at the academy, Nadia's life continued to blossom in unexpected ways. She developed a new curriculum that focused on emotional expression and personal growth alongside technique. She encouraged students to explore their feelings through music, to understand that every note carried a story. The atmosphere at the school shifted. Pressure to win competitions eased, replaced by a joyful community where music was a language of hope and connection. Nadia's relationship with her colleagues grew stronger too. Mr. Keller softened his strict ways, learning from Nadia's gentle patience and passion. Miss Lena became a close friend and collaborator, organizing concerts and workshops to inspire students. Together, they created a safe space where creativity could thrive and where every student's voice mattered. Nadia also found moments of quiet happiness outside music. She took walks in the park, enjoying the sounds of birds and children playing. She visited local cafes, where she wrote letters to distant friends and planned future projects. Sometimes she even allowed herself to dream beyond the academy, to imagine touring other countries, sharing her story and music with new audiences. These dreams no longer felt impossible but were goals she quietly worked toward. One special afternoon, Nadia received a visit from a young girl who had recently started lessons with her. The girl was shy and nervous, afraid she wasn't good enough. Nadia sat beside her, shared stories of her own fears and failures, and then played a simple tune together. As the music flowed between them, the girl's eyes brightened, and a smile spread across her face. In that moment, Nadia knew that her journey had come full circle. She was no longer just a performer but a teacher, a guide, a beacon of hope. Looking back, Nadia understood that her life's challenges had shaped her into the musician and person she had become. The early years of loss, the years of quiet struggle, the return to the stage, they were all threads woven into a rich tapestry. Her music was no longer about proving her talent to the world but about sharing her soul and touching others. Her story spread beyond the academy and concert halls, inspiring many who felt overlooked or underestimated. It showed that true talent could not be hidden forever, and that kindness, resilience, and passion could overcome the harshest obstacles. Nadia became a symbol of second chances, of how life's hardest trials could lead to the most beautiful music. In the years that followed, Nadia continued to perform, teach, and inspire. Her concerts drew larger audiences, and her students flourished, some going on to win awards and scholarships themselves. She remained grounded, always remembering where she came from, and the people who helped her along the way. Nadia's life was a testament to the power of music and the strength of the human spirit. Through her journey, she proved that no matter how plain or forgotten someone may seem, inside there can be a virtuoso waiting to shine. And sometimes, all it takes is one moment of belief, one chance to play, for that brilliance to emerge and light up the world.